So I'll start with myself. So let's see, where do I start? I've been a data person for my entire career. Started off at IBM, um, and I was kind of the face, I guess, for executive briefings. Traveled around the world and tried to convince customers why you pick IBM over Oracle, and Oracle was our 800-pound gorilla. Had a chance to work with very large systems, a lot in data warehousing, analytics, and then I went to Microsoft to work on their big data offerings when they came out on-prem and on Azure. Then 4 years at Oracle working on Exadata systems, and then their AI systems, companies that they acquired. And then the last 5 years, I've been the AI practice leader at Dell. Um, Came out with a quarterly newsletter. I've had the opportunity to publish one scientific paper with researchers from UBC on how to augment drug discovery with deep learning algorithms. And currently, I'm an analyst now. So again, I think just next evolution, I get to be totally agnostic to the technology and really just push out what's the best practice out there to adopt this. To assume that you can see this now in screen show mode. I can't see your, unfortunately, comments or questions, but if you have an urgent question, please ask. Okay, so we're going to spend a quick time overview, and then we'll take a look at the market. And you need a scorecard today because it's changing week by week. It's exciting, yet I can imagine it's pretty unsettling still. We're still at a kind of a real hype with the technology. Then I'd like to share with you a maturity model that we're proposing to the customers that engage us, and some of the best practices that we've seen the leading firms adopt. And there, to the right, is a picture. I'm a big Star Trek fan, so this is, you just tell generative AI just with a simple text prompt, say, hey, create for me a kind of a new kind of starship for passengers, and try to do it in the vein of Star Trek. So that's kind of neat. So I've been in the game for a long time in data, and when I look at the technology, I can't recall too many technologies that has been kind of taken people by, just literally by storm. And even when AI came out, I mean, certainly there was a big boom, but I kind of consider this as like a second boom. And the difference of this boom, and I'd like to hear people's thoughts here too, is I think this is much more, uh, you know, attainable or reachable by the masses. You don't have to be a data scientist to take advantage of this technology. So you've probably heard in the press here on the far left with, like, they take law tests and do well. They take MBA tests and do well. They pass medical exams, do well. 100 million users in what, 2 months? Gates. Everybody says, hey, there's something here. Now, uh, while it's got great technology, and we're going to talk about that, it's not without its risk. My personal, I guess, greatest concern, I don't list it here, is the ability to create fake news really well. Um, but this is going to be disruptive. A lot of people are asking, hey, will I still have a job because of this? And we'll answer those kind of questions. And I'd like to ask that too, how secure you feel, especially if you're in the tech sector. A lot of people have been asked to talk to tech people, and some are very secure, some, maybe not so secure. So at a high level, with a prompt, and generally a prompt, typically it's just a text prompt, although some people are building voice input for that. It will generate, based on the data it's trained, images, text, audio, video, etc. So OpenAI's got a lot of attention. They built this model 3.0, and with reinforcement learning upgrade to 3.5. And now four is available, right? And that was recent news. Bard uh, making a lot of news too. That's Google's chatbot. Um, and then, of course, on the image, Dali is one of the more popular ones. Now, if you take a look at the large language models, is the underlying neural net behind ChatGPT. 2017 is kind of when the paper was released, and then you know, Codex I put there. That's the thing behind GitHub's Copilot. But it really wasn't till like last year, late last year, that it really got good. That it wasn't so toxic with the responses that it exploded. GPT-4, I haven't heard a definitive number of parameters there, but it's safe bet it's in the trillions. And again, this measurement, like how many parameters, like a reflection of the complexity of the connections of the neural net, is not, let's say, a sole indicator of how good you are. I would expect with better data that you can really get those numbers quite low and reduce the cost of training it. But for now, it is an indicator that some people use. And now, if you wind back to 2012, that was the year many companies called the big bang of AI. And what happened in 2012, there's an annual contest called ImageNet, and it tested algorithms to see, can you recognize as a cat versus a dog. And for the first time, a team from the University of Toronto entered with deep learning algorithms. Before, they were not those kind of algorithms. They were also the first time a team used GPUs to do parallel processing in a massive scale. And they had a lot of data. And the result was so much better than previous years that all the other teams thought they were cheating. They had to rerun it all the time and said, no, this actually works. And from that was an explosion of AI, a lot into the image realm. Uh, I would say a lot in the image realm, but more sophisticated algorithms using deep learning algorithms. So here is what I kind of see is the same thing happening. Is what's different here is we're still using you know deep learning neural nets, but it's a special kind. These large language models are transformer based. And interesting enough, Google gets a lot of credit for pushing out this innovation. But again, it was done in conjunction with researchers in Canada. So if you've never had the chance to write papers, um, a lot of the neural nets, the work that came out on CNNs, et cetera, the people who are considered the grandfathers of AI um, were from that U of T team there. So it's great. I'm based in Canada, so it's you get a front row seat of these great innovations. However, I'll have to acknowledge it's countries like the United States who are very, let's say, entrepreneurial. They take this technology and run with it and make a gazillion dollars. That unfortunately is not what Canadians do. We tinker more. We're good at creating things, but the big boys and girls in countries like the UK and the US are much better in monetizing it. So, but it is kind of the same thing, is that this technology is made possible by a new set of algorithms, this transformer based, uh, and and also list are just some of the use cases here, the popular ones here. So chatbots historically have been really bad, and now they're getting pretty good, for average type of answers, automatically writing papers, responses, etc., creating art. Some are suggesting to use it to create innovative, drug compounds, um, and design as well. So, what are people asking? And I should paraphrase this: what are people working in businesses asking? And so I had the opportunity to talk to quite a few customers now, and they're all kind of going, huh, This looks like, it's something we use. It's not so complex where we need, a team of data scientists, and vendors are starting to come out with all these products, and people are asking like, what's the best practice for adoption? Tell me some use cases for ChatGPTs, what are our limits, etc. Again, I do hear the request: is this going to disrupt jobs out there? So on the left-hand side of this slide, it's a group named Antler who put this together. Lot of the startups, etc. I would say text is probably the most mature, and associated with text code to generate code. And just because it's kind of on, outside the box there, I'll talk about the vendors I put in the box. Some of these are quite big. If you've used Stability AI, if you caught any of the talks about their company, they're claiming they have 5 times the compute power of NASA. So NASA is, one of our clients, and trust me, they have a lot of compute power. But when you're into the realm of generative AI for art and training it over millions and millions of samples, yeah, you can create quite a cluster there. But what we're seeing, and as of last week, I'm sure many of you have heard that both Microsoft and Google almost have identical announcements saying, hey, we're going to introduce generative AI as part of our workplace solutions. I didn't hear dates from either of them, but I think a lot of people, especially people who aren't very creative, are going to try that text to PowerPoint capability. You just give it a Word doc and it'll create your presentation. I mean, how good is that? So what I'm seeing is, yeah, those vendors on the left, you're going to get new ones, industry specific ones. The one in data, I think is interesting. Creating synthetic data is especially great in healthcare, but it's kind of the big players. They kind of want more than their fair share. They're coming in. Uh, Bain is a company that says, "Hey, we're doing a relationship with OpenAI. We're going to consult everything OpenAI. We're going to use it with all our 18,000 members." They're all in. They're an example of a company that says this is the future. The enterprise vendors too. So when you have all your technology, available in things like Word and PowerPoint, it's going to be hard to get away from anything being augmented from AI. And one question that I have at the end that I'm going to ask folks is, does it matter, or are you concerned about originality of work? And can you claim anything is not being impacted by generative AI if all your tools are going to be AI enabled? So needless to say, every industry is being impacted. The opportunity there, I picked a conservative one. There are bigger numbers out there of where this market is growing. So 20,000 compound growth rate means, probably in 4 years, it's going to double. Journalism is an industry I follow a lot, and it's interesting to see people, I guess, wrestle with how they're going to use it. So 2 prominent examples out in the industry, BuzzFeed. Now, they were already cutting down on their people, so it wasn't totally related to ChatGPT. But what they said was, after they laid off 12% of their staff, they said they're going to use it to help them, create certain types of articles. CNET is kind of the poster child of what not to do with ChatGPT. And it's interesting. I think from the get-go, most people said, hey, ChatGPT is not very good at math. And yet they used a number of situations to do a financial type of recommendations. And they didn't check their work. And people said, hey, this is an error. And they went back, and up to almost half their articles they had to fix. So that's an example of what not to do with this technology. So this is an example of, let's say, more business-like and generic type of capabilities here, like producing new products, marketing, sales, customer service, or do sentiment analysis. And the first row, what I've got is how a lot of these firms are using AI today. And basically the theme here is, that you want to get a lot of data, you want to try to analyze it, and see if you can predict, let's say, what customer sentiment's going to be, how to improve by identifying new types of trends or clusters. But in the second row, what we're having generative AI do is kind of takes it to the next level. Is, hey, you know, all that marketing copy that you have on Amazon, right? Like, you don't really need to farm that out to these small niche vendors. You can just use generative AI to create that for you, right? And just eliminate that cost. And how about creating kind of tailored customer letters, watching people's buying patterns and sentiments on social media, and then kind of targeting them. So different kind of use cases with generative AI. Some of the risks and limitations, and I put in parentheses today because this will continue to get addressed, I'm sure. The number one thing that I hear the concern is accuracy. Okay, it's great, it responds real quick, but is it accurate? And some of them, like Bing, are trying to do their best in showing you the source. But again, I would check that as well. Sometimes it's difficult for these algorithms to call out the source. It's a combination of both supervised and unsupervised learning. And when it's unsupervised, difficult to kind of give you a direct path of how decisions are made. Bias, because these large language models were created from the internet, they reflect the bias of the people there. So for some, that's okay. For others, not okay. And it's funny, a new term that IT people and people in business are not used to seeing in a business setting is this term we call hallucinations. That's the context where you ask Chat GPT and you fool it and say, well, I'm going to be on the planet Mars tomorrow. Can you recommend restaurants for me? So sometimes you can catch it. And I'm always late. When people catch it, they publish it, and I try to do the same thing, and then they fix it by that time. So, but there are ways to fool it. Oh yeah, the latest one I saw that they fixed was they asked ChatGPT what's 2 plus 5, and ChatGPT said 7, and then he says, well, my wife says it's 8, and he goes, well, it's still 7. It goes, but my wife is always right. And then ChatGPT in this user's example says, I apologize. It says, if your wife is always right, then it must be 8. Now, the infrastructure required for this, talk to some firms who would like to build their own large language model, and you can do that. Today, and this could change radically, but today it's still a significant investment, maybe 10 plus million to get a really good cluster out there. Although that could radically change with a large language model that doesn't need a lot of data. And if you follow academic large language models, Stanford's working on one that the cost to train to build a model was like under $1,000. It just fundamentally changes the financial dynamics. But today, 2023, it does cost quite a bit, so it's not for everybody to build their own large language model, but you don't really have to. The hyperscalers, the few that will try to build it, typically will build an API so you can fine tune your own kind of model on top of that. And the compute requirements for that will be quite modest. Transparency, again, to call out how something was predicted, how its decision was arrived, it's not so easy all the time, depending on the query. And then on the far right, again, I used to work at Microsoft, and I think they're getting a pass here. When Google makes a mistake, they got 100. What was it? 100 billion, 100 million. Anyway, they got penalized in the stock market just because they made a mistake about the James Webb Telescope, about its first use. And I saw a lot of people test Bing after that, and Bing's chatbot at the time, although it was pre 4.0, and it made the same mistake, but nothing happened to Microsoft with that. But this was a demo that Microsoft had. There were people at Microsoft there, and people are asking, hey, are you sentient? As you can see, it's trying to replicate maybe Descartes, but it seems to have a meltdown here. In the near future, and I would say later this year, again, you're going to see lots more changes out there across industries and capabilities within that industry. So, spending a lot of time with education, and surprise, this one institution said they were all for it, and I said, "Really?" But they were concerned, more on, I guess, how can you do it in a constructive way to get access to it, but still kind of develop independent thought. That was the kind of their struggle. Can it be governed? Uh, in the short answer to that, I think is no. It'll be interesting to see how people proceed here. So there's lots of opportunities for misinformation out there, difficult to detect, and even more difficult to prevent. The role of big tech, personally, having worked for big tech firms, I can tell you firsthand, they're lousy at self-governance. They don't have the right people there. They don't have the right intellectual training to do this. Do not expect that the big players uh, will have any better idea than you would if you started your own kind of startup to say, how should this be used? Um, and a large reason for that is they're constantly in a conflict with their corporate goals, which are typically to make money, to hire salespeople, good product people, etc. Not good people when it comes to, let's say, responsible use. Um, some of the firms, some of the leaders recognize that this is an advantage to augment the performance of the people they have. And I think for the near term, that's probably the best opportunity. And then lastly, the legal framework is still evolving. There's a bunch of class action lawsuits out there. My prediction would be that all these lawsuits will fail. Um, However, having said that, I do think that unless, as a community, we come up with a governance model of saying, hey, we're putting out responsible type of AI applications. Um, Legislation, is probably a very likely scenario. So this is our maturity model, and I would like to get feedback on this. There are lots of maturity models out there for AI, lots of 4 or 5 stage security models. What's different, what we tried to do here is on the axis on the AI maturity, is that we see in traditional AI, the bulk of the effort is to try to make it work. If you've ever developed a model, it's not a trivial task to make it perform well, but once you've got that down, uh, what people are asking more and more now is, okay, you've got a great model, but uh, does it have any unintended consequences? Are you, for instance, breaching data privacy in order to make that great prediction? So more and more, what I see the AI community spend time on is, can we deliver principle-based or human-based, sometimes you hear the word trustworthy AI applications. So the bulk of the people out there, and you can make a gazillion dollars just going up to the middleware proliferation, where you just focus on the technology. But as these applications get more pervasive, affect more people, I believe you're going to see more and more people, especially governments, focus, hey, are you doing this in a principled fashion that you respect human values? So why the need? And so this will be there for your reference here, but um, there are many organizations out there today that are not for profit that have come out with responsible AI guiding principles. So if you're an enterprise architect or solution architect, these are useful things to have before you code anything. You sit down, you go, what are our guiding principles for developing this app? So for AI here, what we focus on are these 6. So it's very common for the other ones here that you see out there as well. Uh, fairness and bias detection, privacy, making sure that it's safe to use and to others, data secure, be accountable. Governance is not just data, not just the AI model, but the business, the corporate governance, ESG as well. Can them all be explained? So most of them cover these. Some can do it in 5, some do it in 7 or 8, etc. Um, and depending what industry you're from, perhaps like financial services, you have all these compliance things you might want to add to this as well to have custom for your organization. But the examples you see on the right, I pick on Facebook, Meta, IBM. Like I said, the big tech companies have done spectacular mistakes here when it comes to AI. And you think, wasn't it common sense that you really shouldn't, do what you're doing here? Like, pick on data that's, very biased, for instance. Um, and again, not to pick on Amazon, but I mean, they had a famous AI model where they trained it with people who did well in their company, and lo and behold, it predicted and selected people who typically were, Caucasian and male, right? And then after a while, they go, okay, maybe this isn't the kind of model we should go forward with. So they did the responsible thing, right? So, and again, but you would think that would be obvious from the start. But unfortunately, when you're just focused on making the model work, people overlook those things. And big tech companies, no exception. So I mentioned before, this is just kind of a short kind of description of what I gave you earlier on kind of what they're trying to do with each one of these principles. But what we advocate is, for your industry, you should add customized principles to make sure that that app kind of aligns with your corporate values. So I guess the kind of summary of why responsible AI and understanding, where you are, maturity, where you like to go, is that while this is powerful technology, you really require a business strategy, and that's the question I probably get the most is, hey, can you help us? What is our strategy? What policy should we define? So really, you have to kind of get a hold of your key business stakeholders and just understand, okay, what is it that we stand for? What does this company represent? What's our key value prop out there to the community? And so the AI strategy and guiding principles, they need to align there. And then you pick your technology enablers. And I'm a big fan of picking technologies. If you don't have to use AI, that's fine. AI is, not the easiest one to really understand and deploy out there and maintain to make sure everything works. Graph technology is really taking off, but pick your technology enablers and then have a foundation here to make sure people process technology are in line to support this. So again, any enterprise architects here, our recommendation is, have an architecture for this. Think about the big picture. Have a vision, have all these things rather than just buy a product to say, hey, isn't this great what it can do to deploy it. So before we open up to some Q&A is what to expect. You just expect that AI will continue to become more pervasive. It will be a great way to enhance the productivity, performance of people in the company. Generative AI will continue to evolve and capabilities will continue to get better and really prepare to adapt. The technology, the entry point is so much easier now that it is going to become very pervasive, if not already, that you need a business strategy for how this technology should be used. Okay, so let's go. And any questions? me just check that. Can you explain priming ChatGPT and hmm. Okay. I'm going to attempt the first question. So if you go to the OpenAI website, uh, we have this term called fine tuning, and that's how you can tailor a model. So let's say you wanted to create a large language model or that is specific to the legal industry, and that's kind of the recommendation is um, you can leverage off the history of what ChatGPT consumed, but you can make it much more fine grained and sensitive to legal jargon. Um, and so, and again, you don't need to consume a gazillion, millions and millions of entries, but you still have to train it with that legal jargon. So still a considerable amount of effort, but not as horrendous as trying to build your own large language model. I don't know if that answers your question, but please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I would. Sorry for any noise. Hi, my name is Gabriel. So basically, what I'm asking is in in a context of what I use GPT right now is mostly for coding. I still didn't go into, for example, deep code or codex. I have been using Copilot, but right now my question is, okay, if I have, let's say, 10 different projects, maybe three, four different technologies, should I keep them separate? So with that priming, um, then each project kind of gets more tailored responses, or should I keep everything in one kind of that chat tab and just push everything in the same thread?
Yeah, without understanding or getting the background of each one, my gut reaction would be the first one to make it as unique as possible, rather than create the general one. That's a I find when I use ChatGPT, not just for coding, ChatGPT seems to be good at giving you the average sensible answer. It's not so good at picking the best answer or insightful answer. So it depends, kind of like there are a lot of technologies out there that are just good enough. If that's what the company wants, they want to get a product out the door fast, then yeah, let's do more general, faster go time market. But if you want something that I find it distinguishes your product from the market, something better, faster, that that's typically how I would lead. But kind of your mileage will vary depending on some of those factors. But let me ask the folks here um, their experience, especially for coding. Do you see this as something that enhances? Do you see it as a threat? That hey, junior coders, right? Or we're not going to need those kind of folks. We'll just, we'll take what ChatGPT writes.
I kind of actually come from both because I'm a senior in Android for the past, I have been developing for the past 8 years. But since GPT came out, I finally made that step and said, okay, let's move in this direction. So I'm a very junior in any machine learning. I don't know a lot. And I just started basically Python,
Yeah,
and I already feel very, very comfortable
that's
with
good.
Python.
That's
Yeah,
good.
because I think a lot of it comes from my background before, because I understand the architectures. So I understand when it gives me, let's say, so to say, bad code, so I can ask it to maybe rewrite it, optimize it, make it more modular. But I think it's my general sense is that it's very good for juniors and it's very good for seniors, but I don't see the benefit for the mid level to push through to that seniority.
Right. So do you feel? let's say it's a junior, I can see the value there that you can pick up these things really quick, very interactive. Um, do you think the people in the middle feel threatened then? Because it's kind of the average, right? Because of the,
I think so. I mean, I don't see I see that it might become, for example, ChatGPT might become something like WordPress for web developers. You know, when it came, it was, let's say, booming websites, but then with time, web developers got cut their, I mean, front-end developers, their pay grade got cut because there was a lower barrier to entry.
yes.
But the mid-level, I think the mid-level in any field needs a senior to actually push through those barriers. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, no, thanks for sharing. And uh, I feel the same on the seniors. I think senior folks can recognize kind of the strengths and weaknesses easier on it, and they don't feel as threatened. But because the barrier of entry is less now, a lot of people would say, well, what's the value of me learning maybe Python when it's so easy now, right? You kind of have to really think through what this is going to do for your career when it's much easier. And some people, the hype aspect is, you know, why need coders at all? I'm going to do this no code, right? But of course, you're not going to produce something that great, but the hype is right that we don't need this. So, um, any other developers want to share their perspective here?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm a junior developer, not very long in the industry, but I see this as a very, very big threat. And maybe that's just my junior level interpretation, but I'm thinking of iteration. Like if it continues to develop at this pace, this fast, in three iterations, what is it going to be like? Is it going to be able to do quality code? Is it going to be able to check its own code? Is it going to be able to debug? Like, it just feels like a huge disruptor to me. And then will it be a future of just a few people managing the tool itself and the tool just doing everything else? So I feel like looking into the future, if it continues to develop as fast as it has been developing, it seems like it'll be a big disruptor. But I don't know if there'll be a plateau in the technology, like it'll hit a barrier somewhere to where it'll, it won't, there'll be a cap. I don't know if that will happen or if it will just continue to this kind of breakneck speed of development. If it does, then it feels like it's going to disrupt definitely development roles, but that's just my interpretation of from a junior level.
Yeah. No, no. Thanks for sharing. The For some firms, that's where responsible AI comes from. They go, "Hey, we're going to do this. Uh, are we going to have a policy if it eliminates jobs?" And some firms will say, "Hey, it's a good thing if we can do more with less." Others might say, "No, we need people. We want to kind of leverage that resource and make them more productive. Maybe we need less, but we don't want to eliminate." Um, and yeah, and back in my day, the programmer was kind of a tricky career option to start with, because you got really good, you become an architect. So you don't see a lot of people stay there all the time, and so I always found it difficult to find people who wanted to stay there, because they always get attracted to do other things. And here it's just another thing to kind of um, you know take people away from just staying as just a coder. Anybody else? Okay. So let's see what else in terms of ethical use general. What are aspects which have made improvements over there? Okay. So yeah, I am writing about this on some of the ethical AI there's a lot of tools out there and a lot of people proposing, hey, we can audit this stuff, but it's right now it's like the Wild West. The tools are still kind of being created. If you want to create a startup and say, as I mentioned before, we're going to help companies guide them to build responsible AI, you'd be just as good as the majors. And right now in the majors, I put there, was it Microsoft just kind of cut off of, you know, they eliminated one group, although it's under 10 people. They were responsible for kind of responsible AI governance there. And Google, they're always acknowledged as the AI leader, but they've had really rough road on trying to do responsible AI. So they can say it, but doing it is a totally different task. And the tools today are they're still kind of being developed as we speak. So big opportunity. And if you have some background, you don't really have to be a data scientist. Although it kind of just helps fundamentally of what it takes to build a model, but you certainly don't have to be in the weeds in the technology to be good at governing and guiding people with responsible AI. Feels like the smartphone. Yeah, some people have associated and kind of made analogies with this, with the smartphone boom. What should be the approach? Should be the market research? Should we follow to solve end user problems? What should be the approach to market research? Well, again, there's lots of use cases out there, and we're with a couple firms right now. They're trying to define what do we do first. And again, that big architecture is you really find what business capabilities kind of define our business. And then there's a process of identifying, mapping those are typically what are the highest impact to our customers with the lowest complexity. And that's the kind of quadrant that people should kind of plan to target. You can have high customer impact, high cost, which a lot of tech is, and like traditional conventional type of AI. It's things that you should do, but you don't do it because of the high cost. But here with generative AI, you actually could have low cost to implement and high customer impact. So kind of use cases right there, like let's take ChatGPT, things that are kind of text or conversational based, things like customer service, are good types of use cases in marketing, mass mailings, opportunities to tailor that much better are kind of the cases people are chasing right now. For being in the computer science industry, what is the best route in your opinion to adapt to AI? Adapt is to get into SDE roles, get into data. Huh. I think the question here I'm trying to figure is kind of how to build a career here in AI. And yeah, most people, if you don't have the background, aren't going to give you a job being a junior data scientist. So I will tell you from firsthand experience that when you're building this stuff, 90% of the work has to do with what I would call data engineering. So it's kind of like, mundane stuff like, can we get the data out of the data warehouse? If you're in the medical field, there's this thing called Epic that's used a lot. Like that's where all the medical client information is. How do we extract that? And 90% of the time, that's where data scientists spend all the time. It's not making this great algorithm and tuning it. It's getting access to the data and then cleaning that data and transforming that data so it's you be able to use into the model. So I would say that's kind of the easier way to get in, is if you can demonstrate that you can manage data well to get it into the model. That's probably one of the easier ways to kind of um, get snapped up by the data science team, because they spend a lot of time doing that. So I hope that answers that question. What post do you recommend to ourselves, for us to keep an eye on trends? Well, there are some great organizations and posts. I subscribe to maybe a handful of, and again, it depends on your background, but the ones that I subscribe to are more data centric. Like they don't talk, you know, at a scientific level. They talk about what data it took to get there, and there's a few newsletters that do well there. One's called, I think, they call themselves the only AI newsletter you need. I think they call themselves AI Trends or something. Um, I do go to a lot of university conferences, and usually there a lot of them are no charge, which is great. The one I like a lot is Stanford. They have a lot of thought leaders there. A lot of the pioneers in AI um, came from Stanford. The one who did the ImageNet, um, who provided that data for that, she's from there. Um, I forget the guy's name. One of the big thought leaders in AI. He came from Stanford as well. Of course, University of Toronto. Um, Lots of thought leaders there. Um, Big tech, I kind of watch, but I don't really look at them as leaders. I think they're trying to kind of tell the world all the time that they are the leaders, but they keep making mistakes. So uh, I look for industry specific because I think the big tech vendors treat AI as more of a general technology, but the real breakthroughs come through when you have business centric, industry specific knowledge married with the model. That creates something disruptive rather than let's do AI modeling faster with ML ops. So I try to keep my eye open for industry specific types. But we're a bit over time. But if you have questions that you select an answer, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. Be happy to respond. But I hope this was interesting and useful for you. And thanks very much for those who gave their perspective. Very interesting here. And it's a changing thing. Like we have this thing like 6 months from now, like I'm sure half my slides would change. There's going to be that much more innovation. So uh, have a great day. Good luck out there with your endeavors. And yes, feel free to reach out. And I'm hoping the Codementor people make this presentation available. If not, please contact me. I'll send you the presentation. Okay. Thanks. Bye, everybody.